My name is Paul Shelley, and welcome to the AstroHistorian. This is a channel dedicated to exploring and explaining the lore of sci-fi and space universes and discussing their impact. Today we'll be talking about the tragic origin of an armored giant, Virgil LTD, who would rise from the ashes of the fall of Virgil to develop the very first powered exosuits to help bring the fight against the very species that took their home from them. Before we get into that, I want to thank y'all for your continued support, as we're now over 19,000 subscribers and rising. Make sure you join them by hitting that subscribe button and the bell icon to stay up to date on the latest videos. If you want early ad-free access to these videos, consider joining the Patreon as well, with the link in the description. I'd also like to thank today's sponsor. That's right, we have a sponsor finally, Mech. Mech is a fast-paced PvP mech shooter with competitive mayhem for everyone. Choose from dozens of weapons and mechs with special abilities for endless combinations. Fight with friends or compete in a global arena of players, maps, and modes. It has tons of game modes, from 5v5 control point and deathmatch modes to 2v2 death matches, with over 20 maps and 30+ unique weapons and other customizations for each mech. You can even play with friends and compete in tournaments and events for loot, gear, and bragging rights. If you sign up with the link in the description, you'll get a mil-spec legendary skin, 500 A-coins, and 70k credits. It's also an easy way to support the channel, plus a pretty fun game to boot. Thanks again to Mech for the sponsorship. With that, let's talk about the armor designer forged in the fires of defeat. The story of Virgil Limited is the story of the Virgil system and the Celia family. Virgil had been discovered by accident in 2412 by an astrophotographer who drifted so close to an unknown jump point, the gravitational pull of the spatial anomaly affected his sensitive equipment. This chance discovery ended up becoming one of the most important moments in human history, as the system that was discovered on the other end was in a region of space thought to be not accessible via jump points. On top of this, the system that would come to be named Virgil had one of the best candidates for terraformation that humans had ever discovered, in Virgil 1. Virgil 1 was filled with super nutrients in the soil, which allowed for the planet to be terraformed in a matter of years and not decades like most others. It also created gigantic tropical trees and soil so fertile it could grow food faster than anywhere else in human space. This led to Virgil becoming the literal poster child of human expansion during the golden age of human colonization, and the inspiration behind the public-private partnership of Project Farstar, whose goal was to explore this new region of space in the search for possible other Virgils, and eventually even discovered Terra itself. The Celia family was one of the first groups to stake their claim in the new system, becoming very successful farmers on Virgil 1 and passing their land down generation after generation. However, this would change in 2712, when Orion finally fell to the Vandal. This threw Tiber into becoming the new front line against the alien horde, and Virgil transformed from an agricultural paradise to a military support station. This is where Ponia Celia would step into the limelight. In 2727, when she had finished her equivalency, the entire economy of the world had changed. The military-industrial complex had become the main economic driver of the planet, so while being born a farmer, Ponia realized that she would make far more as a factory worker, finding a job in a plant that was developing armored plating intended for a variety of imperial defenses. Ponia's dedication and natural leadership saw her rewarded for her work, and she was soon promoted to floor supervisor within her plant. It was there where she met her future partner, Geordie, and together they had a daughter named Cedra in 2730. It all seemed like her life was sending her to the top of this burgeoning industry, until the fall of Tiber in 2737. The sudden collapse of the defenders of Tiber was not anticipated, so as the Navy attempted to set up a secondary line in the Virgil system, backed by the now legendary Black Crows of Squadron 214, they were unable to hold back the advancing Vandal, who descended upon Virgil 1. The grinding advance of the Vandal in Orion and Tiber was not to be the fate of the once idyllic world of humanity's golden age of exploration, as the planet fell in a fraction of the time. A now famous photograph highlighted this sudden and traumatic fall of Virgil. It showed the charred remains of an imperial customs house, likely in the capital city of Kastak. Wrecked white pillars framing the smoking coal-black sky, with a cracked signboard on the right of the image. On the board, the original proclamation of exports had the word "death" crudely scrawled under it to highlight the hopelessness of the fight. Ponya's factory had managed to survive the initial bombing, and thus she rallied the workers and their families to escape the doomed cities. They were forced to flee on foot, and thus would never make the evac shuttles in time. It was then that Ponya directed the group to make for the titanic forest of trees to avoid the landing forces. The trees protected them from the initial invasion, as the canopies were too thick to land any forces. Then, the harvesters arrived. These massive vehicles were dropped onto worlds the Vandal invaded to literally devour any and all resources of the world with ruthless efficiency, felling the titanic forest with ease. The survivors realized they couldn't outrun these monstrous vehicles, and once again Ponya came up with a plan. She and a few others would take their few remaining weapons and lead an attack to draw the harvesters away from the rest of the group, giving them time to make for the evac zone. The plan worked, as the workers arrived to find the 214 having volunteered to fight through the hive of Vandal ships to escort more civilian ships off the planet. Geordi and Cedra managed to make it out, but Ponya was never seen again. Cedra and her father found themselves resettled on the second planet of the Vega system, Aramis. This was mostly a military hub before the fall of Tiber and Virgil, boasting 4 naval bases and one of the oldest UEE army bases still in service, Camp Mannheim. Now it was bustling with refugees from the fallen worlds. She had grown up admiring her lost mother and deeply scarred by her experience surviving the fall of Virgil at the tender age of 7. So at the age of 19, she funneled her trauma into a new venture, one directly dedicated to protecting the future soldiers of humanity against the very Xenos that took her home. She realized that many of these refugees who lived near her were expert craftspeople whom the local government and businesses of Aramis were hesitant to hire. Cedra proved to be a natural leader just like her mother, and convinced several of these locals to pool their resources to found a new company, one that took their experience in defensive armor technologies to craft a new generation of personal body armor. They would officially found this company in 2749, and named it after the lost home, Virgil LTD, the LTD standing for Limited. They found the demand for their armor was far more than they could supply. This was because of a secret advantage. Their designs were heavily based on the work the founders of Virgil had made during their time in the military-industrial complex factories of their homeworld. This would make their armor stand out to other competition like their neighbor Kastak, also named after the first city to fall on Virgil, and created in response to the growing need to defend Vega. Before long, the company expanded their production facility, hiring more skilled refugees from Virgil. Their work grew in popularity as Aramis was now the new de facto border to Vandal-controlled space. Thus, many militia, mercenary, and security forces needed to improve their armor. Because of the UEE Navy's presence on the world, the word of their unique armor soon spread through the entire military, all the way to the Imperator himself. As a result, within a few years, Cedra secured their first military contract with a large retainer that allowed them to scale even faster. After successfully fulfilling their contract with the UEE, the advocacy was so impressed with their craftsmanship that they commissioned Virgil to make the next generation of combat armor for their agents. This would become known as the True Def armor line, which is still in active use by both UEE and civilian forces alike. It is highly regarded for being an ideal balance of protection and mobility. In the game, the armor offers a 20% damage reduction and is rated for temperatures from -35 degrees to 65 degrees Celsius. After the success of the True Def line, the company would then pivot to create one of the true masterpieces of armor design of the modern era, the Zeus system. This was built out of the framework of an industrial Titan power armor, often known as Titan suits. It's unclear if Virgil was the first to produce these suits, or if they modified existing power armor. But regardless, it is known that they would produce some of the first powered armor humanity would ever develop. Standing at nearly 10 feet in height, the Zeus system is more driven than worn, creating a cross between a mech and an exosuit. These behemoths magnify the strength of the user and are capable of wielding spaceship-based weaponry to support infantry squads, and are the favorite blunt instrument of the UEE Marines, who use them to take on Vandal in close-quarters combat. Truly the ultimate response to the Xenos who took their home from the people of Virgil. The company didn't rest, however, expanding their work into armor and Titan suits designed for industrial and construction work, including the Paladin helmet. First designed in 2855, the Paladin was originally a salvage and repair helmet which caught the attention of the company executives, who would integrate it into the personal body armor line as well. It was reworked to become a combat-rated medium helmet made of a durable alloy and reinforced plating protecting the back of the head. It offers 30% damage resistance and environmental protection from -61 degrees to 91 degrees Celsius. They would also develop the Sanger helmet off of the RSS-designed Morozov helmet. This heavy helmet was designed as both a combat and hazardous environment helmet. It has a prominent brow ridge designed to absorb and disperse strikes through the helmet's special impact resistance inner lining. It features high-quality diamond laminate lenses over the eyes and a top-tier dual-sensor air filtration system protruding from the front like fangs. It offers 40% damage resistance to most types of damage, with a 60% damage resistance to stun damage, and can operate in environments from -90 degrees to 115 degrees Celsius. Virgil continued to enjoy many years of success into the 30th century, but once again, the specter of the Vandal would return to haunt the descendants of the refugees from Virgil. In October 2945, the Vandal would unleash a planet-wide attack on Aramis. It seemed to be a repeat of history, as the entire upper management of Virgil LTD was wiped out in the initial devastation of New Corvo. Luckily though, quick action and tactical genius from Squadron 42 and Admiral Ernst Bishop were able to push back the Vandal attack, but the damage was done. Despite the devastation, Virgil LTD did not fall in the aftermath, instead using the tragedy as a rallying cry, affirming their original mission and purpose to help humanity survive the Vandal threat. Under the leadership of the new CEO, Vash Darren, a former mid-level manager and descendant of the company's early employees, Virgil has evolved once more. They have transitioned to a decentralized mode of operation, selling off lesser patents and investments to finance the rebuilding of its destroyed infrastructure. While the reconstruction continues, it is clear that the defiant members of Virgil have not given up the fight and are determined to be the shield that humanity can rely on to defend and defeat their hated Vandal enemy. I'd like to thank you for watching, and I'd like to thank those on screen now for supporting the channel financially. If you want to throw in a few credits, think about becoming a member on YouTube. And if you want to get a bit more for your contribution, join the Patreon. Patreons get early ad-free access to all videos, including exclusive early access to my long-running complete history of Star Citizen lore series, of which episode 3 is now available on Patreon and will be released to the public next week. If you want to know what you're getting, check out episode 1 and 2, which are both available now to all viewers in the top right. Now I want to hear your thoughts on Virgil LTD and any other lore topics in the comments below. And as always, remember, ex historia ad astra.